believe it, but I had my bone graft surgery 10 years ago this year. Where has the time gone? So I had two bone graft surgeries to treat my cleft lip and palate. And the first was in June 2013 and the second was October 2013. So I was only 9 at the time, so I don't remember everything, but this was the first surgery that I was kind of aware of. Before this, I'd had 3 cleft surgeries, but they were all before the ages that I could remember. So yeah, I do remember bits from this one. So today I just wanted to talk to you about it because I just can't believe it was 10 years ago. Like, it's crazy. It's probably good to start with what the surgery actually is and why I had it, just in case you're not aware. So I was born with a bilateral cleft lip and palate, and it was complete. So all this means is that I was born with gaps in my lip, palate, and the gums on the top. And it was bilateral because it was gaps on both sides, and it was complete because it went all the way through to my nose. So I had repair surgeries when I was born, one for my lip, one for my palate. No, I think I had 2 for my lip, 1 for my palate. And then when I was 9, it was time for my bone graft surgery. And a bone graft is basically just where surgeons take a piece of bone from somewhere in your body and put it somewhere else, basically. And for people born with a cleft, bone tends to be taken from the hip and placed into the gaps that you have in your gum. To give you a bit of an idea of what it was like, this whole gum on the top here was in 3 different parts. I could wiggle this middle part. It was really weird, and it meant that my teeth were all going to grow in funny and they wouldn't really be able to align them properly with braces while there were still gaps there. I mean, there's multiple reasons why these big gaps need closing, really, but another thing was there was basically holes where these gaps were, holes through to my nose, so certain foods and drinks and even toothpaste and that kind of thing would basically just come out of my nose when I ate. So basically they just needed to fill those gaps. And so what they did was they took from my left hip just a piece of bone. The incision was maybe about that big. I've got a scar that's about that big. And it's quite funny because I had to have an x-ray like a few years back, and you could actually see like the indent in my hip. It's really weird. Anyway, so yeah, they just basically took some bone from my hip and filled up those gaps. Because this is kind of a big operation, and you know, I had 2 gaps, they didn't want to do it all in one. So like I said, I had one in June, and then 6 months later in October, I had another one, and they basically just did one side at a time. So my first bone graft, I was in year 4 at school at the time, and this operation was to close this gap. I have mentioned this a few times before in other videos, but I go to Great Ormond Street Hospital in London for my cleft care. That's just where I've always gone, but it's really far away for me. So we ended up staying the night before my operation in like the patient hotel that the hospital has, because a lot of people do travel quite far to get to that hospital. I think I stayed in hospital for 2 nights. I could be wrong, but that's kind of what I remember. I just remember being really bored, to be honest. Just watching TV and just, yeah, not really getting up, not really doing much. And I'd say pain-wise, I don't really remember being in too much pain. I mean, I remember complaining more about my hip than I complained about my face, even though my face was super swollen. But I think the thing was, for me, I was allowed to walk on my hip. It was fine. They encouraged it, but I think at the time I was saying it was painful, but actually I think I was just more scared than anything. I didn't really know what to expect. I also had like this really big like sticky plaster thing on my hip, and so that was probably quite uncomfortable to walk with as well. So I remember, especially after the first bone graft, being just like refusing to walk, and they had to get me a wheelchair to come out of the hospital in because I would just not walk. But I think pain-wise it wasn't too bad. And then when I got home, of course, there was all the usual aftercare with like cleft surgery, so just keeping my face clean, like with the saline rinse thingy, and obviously taking antibiotics to prevent infection and that kind of thing. And I was off school for, I'd say, about a week, just, you know, to take it easy and make sure everything heals enough. Oh, and of course, with there being stitches in my mouth everywhere, I had to be really careful with the kinds of foods that I ate, and it was quite uncomfortable to eat certain foods as well. So I had to basically just have a soft food diet for quite a long time, which I kind of remember, especially in the hospital, I just hated it. It was things like mashed potato and jelly. Fun fact, I now don't eat mashed potato or jelly. and I think it must just be something in my head just being like, no, I just associating bad memories with it and don't like the texture or just no. But yeah, so I ate quite a lot of that, beans, ice cream, I can't really remember what else. Oh, probably soup, I don't know. But yeah, so that's kind of like the first bone graft. I can't remember exactly how long it took to heal, but like I say, I was off school for about a week, and then 6 months later, I had the same operation, but on the other side. So again, we went down to London. We stayed in the patient hotel, and then had the operation. This time, it was supposed to just be for the other side that they didn't operate on the time before, but I'm pretty sure like the first side came open again, so they ended up operating on both, and they basically took the bone from my hip from the exact same place, so it's just one scar. They just went in the same area. So yeah, same hip. I've not got two dodgy hips. um, and yeah, they did the same thing again, but this time obviously they had to do both sides. So after this operation, I was like really quite swollen. But similar kind of recovery, I was off school for about a week again. This time, I don't know if it's because I knew what to expect, but I do remember actually walking this time. I didn't refuse. They didn't have to give me a wheelchair, and I did walk out of the hospital that time. But yeah, I'd say the second bone graft went better. I don't really know. Like I said, I was there, but I was really young and don't remember much. But I think, because I knew what to expect more, I kind of just got on with it. Yeah, that was the second bone graft over and done with. And I haven't had any more since then. It was just those two when I was younger. But I have kind of experienced some, I don't know if you'd call them complications, but since then, there have been still some things that have affected me due to having that operation. So, thinking specifically about my hip, I don't know if it's made weaker because of it. For a few years after, and still sometimes today, just not as often, I do still get, it aches a bit or it just feels weaker. So like if I do too much walking or something, then it's a little bit sore. I don't know if that's just me. I mean, I have spoken to someone else with the cleft and they do still have trouble with their hip as well. So I did actually have some physio like a few years ago, and as well as my hip still affecting me into the future, I did notice when I was about 14 that one of the holes had come open again. So it wasn't like the whole gum, because before, like I said, like this whole top gum was in three separate parts. But what this was just like a little hole sort of up here at the top of my gum, and things were starting to go through that and come through my nose again. I think that's called a fistula, something like that. So I had that repaired when I was 14, but that wasn't like, they didn't need any more hip bone or anything like that. That was just a case of, sewing it up. But they're just a couple of things that have, affected me since that surgery, but most of that is resolved now. And like I say, the hip pain isn't, as often as it used to be. But I guess that's kind of it for this video. These were just the things that I could remember about my experience with the bone graft, and it was just a little video that I wanted to make today just to say, like, I cannot believe it's been 10 years. Absolutely crazy. But I think there probably will be more videos that I want to make about this in the future, just because it's such a big important surgery that a lot of people with a cleft have to go through. And I think there's so much that I just want to say about it, to raise awareness of it, but also help people who may have to go through it feel a bit less alone. So if there's anything you want to know about it, whether that's my experience just in general, or any advice that you may want, then do leave things in the comments below and I will think about making another video for you. But that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you all again very soon. Bye!